David, so exciting to meet you, and thank you for coming to London Business School. Please do tell us about what you do.
Well, thanks for having me here in the first place. And I currently am a venture partner at Zinc Ventures. Zinc Ventures is a leading pre-seed deep tech venture builder out of London. And I'm also a general partner in a venture studio out of Dubai called Fikra Ventures, focused on AI. So basically all my activities are around deep tech, particularly in healthcare, and also around AI, essentially. I'm also the CEO of a spin-out of Oxford University in the health space, so I'm also an entrepreneur.
Wow, that's a lot of things that you're doing. Let's start by talking about deep tech, AI, and what does future look like?
Okay, so let's define deep tech first. I think many times we assume that everybody knows what it is. I think generally for me, and at least this is the definition that I follow, deep tech refers to technologies that are being developed by companies that they do not have a product market fit yet, or they do not even have a market proof of concept as such. So in other words, they sit somewhere between the pure research and the actual market. And for me, those are the deep tech companies. There are examples in AI that are still deep tech. So some of the foundational models that are more power efficient. Other AI solutions out there have already transcended the frontier of deep tech and become commercial. So at this point.
And these technologies that you're talking about, or problems that are there, don't have a viable solution in the market.
Some of them don't, or some of them don't have good solutions. In the biology side of things, for instance, oftentimes there are no solution for certain diseases, or there are certain problems that are being tackled using technologies that have been developed by deep tech companies that couldn't be tackled before. I mean, there are a large number of those in a more, how to call them, general segments of the market that happens as well. I mean, I think we are talking about self-driving cars at this point, right? Now, someone may argue that there's not really an issue with people driving. I would argue otherwise, given the number of accidents. So it's always a matter of whether the problem exists and hasn't been tackled, or there are better ways enabled by new technologies to tackle those problems.
You mentioned about healthcare.
Yeah.
So give us an example of where deep tech in the context of healthcare is something that there needs to be focus on.
So there are, for example, the drug discovery platforms, which basically tackle using AI or algorithms or other solutions, the development of pharma products. Some of them, for instance, develop new ways of structuring antibodies to make them more efficient in cancer treatment. In medtech, there are all sorts of developments. The company Sonosine, that I'm still at the helm of in Oxford, is developed a new imaging technology to replace MRI and CT, which is based on physics. Now, what's the need for that? To have repeatable, cheap, on-the-spot imaging. That's something that at this point in time hasn't been sorted. All the other methods are expensive, limited in terms of the number of patients that can use them, or limited in the number of times you can use it on a patient. CT can only be used 4 times a year on a healthy patient, 6 on a cancer patient due to irradiation.
And why is it that deep tech is building momentum now? What's happening that is making it gain momentum?
So on one hand, we had the uprising of AI. I think, and particularly at the beginning when we were discussing foundational models and basically looking at how to call it, applications for those foundational models. So there's been a heavy interest in that, particularly on the more futuristic views on whether that can replace human intelligence and humans in the process. That's been derived into other sorts of discussions, into all sorts of ethics discussions as well, and impact on society. There's also been an uprising in defense technology that has been in parallel pulling on things like space technology. We also have realized once again that we are running out of sources of energy, which seems a constant in human society. I've explained this before, but I don't know why anybody is surprised about the trends in energy. This is the only curve that humans have forecasted and trades that have held for the past thousands of years. Since we discovered fire, the trend is a geometric curve that is always going up increasingly faster, and that's been the case for as long as I remember. So that creates problems in the energy domain as well.
And is there a lot of capital that is available that is coming into this space, or do you think there is more need of allocation of capital?
So for the past, if I don't recall badly a statistic, in 2023, it was around between 20 and 30% of all VC investment was going into deep tech. I do think we'll see increasing numbers because we are talking about technologies to solve real life problems, right? If you look at it backwards in time, there was a significant amount of investment in software as a service, and everything was software related, and particularly services. And I think in time, that's been superseded initially by AI-enabled services, which is arguable whether they are deep tech or not, but there's also been some additional interest, particularly from governments and institutions in developing key sectors for the economy and strategic sectors. Those are all by definition included in deep tech. I mean, those are the pharma, the biology, the defense tech, or the dual use technology as well, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, nuclear fusion, and alternative sources of energy. And then things that we talk less about, but I think if you look at what happened in Spain with the blackouts, things like smart grid management, energy storage technologies, intelligent systems to manage those, I think they are definitely on the deep tech domain on the interest, in the interest of countries and individuals and companies. So,
you know, AI has been a word or terminology that's been there for many, many years, right? But now everybody is using the word AI in nearly everything that they do. So how would you differentiate, you know, deep tech and just the random use of AI that you see everywhere?
Okay, this is something slightly ironic that I told people. So the machine learning models exist since 1950s. Yes. As I was growing up, and I was still a child, okay, the Prolog and Lisp were the languages that people used to try to program artificial intelligence into computers, and I dabbled with that early on in my life, right? Now, the irony here and the paradox is that what brought AI is the uprising of the GPU, okay? So it's hardware. And I think people continuously keep talking about the software, the models, the middleware, the actual software developments. I think, in my opinion, the biggest enabler that has brought about AI has been the development in the GPU technology that is a hardware development.
Yeah, that's the computing power.
That the computing power has enabled all the rest. Then foundational models have something very interesting from my viewpoint, and this is another discussion I had over LinkedIn a while ago, which is, well, basically all the papers that have analyzed the LLMs, the large language model, have come to a conclusion that I define as, well, these are stochastic parrots. So essentially, they are probabilistic models in a way that return an answer based on a training that has been done that assign probabilistic weights. The answer that someone gave to me is, well, humans are also probabilistic parrots. And I think that's as fun as this sounds, that's probably a conclusion. So that development has been key. I think we haven't seen all of it. We are seeing LLM models that are lighter on the GPU consumption, and something that I'm deeply interested in, which is the AI at the edge, so which is the applications in physical AI and AI of things, where you do not have immense amount of power, you do not have an unlimited number of GPUs, and where your models have to deal with real-life decisions. And I think that's probably for me the next frontier of development in AI.
So if you look at the next 2-3 years, are there some big challenges that deep tech is facing?
Well, across all the sectors, there are quite a few. I think one of them is the increasing, limitation on data availability, for instance. So it's becoming apparent that the boom of AI is getting more protections around data. So if I'm a pharma company, I'm starting to get more and more anxious about my data being shared, so my competitors can use a publicly available model or paid for that is being trained on my data. I will not want to do that. So we are seeing a challenge, which is we are moving from publicly available, even open source model to proprietary in-company health models that combine LLMs and agents. I think that's a clear trend, and that will pose a challenge for new entrants and for people developing AI applications. Specifically, energy is becoming a challenge, but I mean, as I explained in the panel, basically one of the things that is very curious is that depending on who you ask, either we are too many humans and we are running out of resources and burning the earth, which to an extent is true, or on the other hand, we basically are too few and we are going extinct due to low birth rates. Now, probably the truth is nowhere. I still don't have enough data to basically judge on one side or the other. But I think we are going to have the challenge of combining that lower population number in the West with what is still large population numbers in other countries, with some replacement of roles with AI. And I think people are saying, well, AI is coming from the jobs. Yeah, but AI is coming from the jobs of people that don't exist as well. And I think that's where I see difficulties, but also opportunities.
You talked about computing power and GPUs.
Yeah.
Now, in the recent past, we have seen examples of some countries come up with chips that are probably working as efficiently as some of the most costlier ones.
Yeah.
Without naming companies or countries, what do you think is the future where this is concerned?
Okay, so what I mentioned about energy is the case, right? I was mentioning, for instance, the development in Abu Dhabi, the new announcement that there will be 5 gigawatts allocated to AI users in the shape of data centers and GPU farms, right? Now, 5 gigawatts are 5 nuclear reactors. This 1 gigawatt per reactor. So that means that the United Arab Emirates has planned or will build those reactors, okay? The other solution is the alternative, which is what you're saying, right? Is that, well, maybe we can build less production capacity of energy if we find ways of being more efficient. So I think definitely there's a path towards sustainability and towards lower consumption of the chips and improvements in efficiency. There's movements towards using photonic technology as opposed to traditional chips to allow for that. But I think, unlike other fields, that's a field that is very slow in development and is costly and is difficult. So therefore, I do not expect breakthroughs, but I do expect continuous work towards that. I think definitely over the next few years, we'll see a lot of investment in that area.
Wonderful. You're both a builder and an investor. In many times, these are two extremes. Yep. Because the ones who want to create for the satisfaction of creation. And investors look for a commercial viability. So where is this coming together where deep tech is concerned?
We have 2 ways of doing it. So in Fikra Ventures, in the venture studio, we look at actual problems. And then we try to use solutions that exist in AI, specifically, some of those in deep tech, to actually sort or basically address those problems, right? I mean, I think there are situations in security that we've seen, in physical security, actually, there are many interesting applications where some of the AI on the edge, AI technologies actually have a role. So that would be an example of how to reconcile both, because you are basically drawing on a pool of knowledge in deep tech and technologies that exist, but you're doing it from the angle of there is a need, there's an actual need for that. The second thing, in my personal experience and my personal capacity, is actually finding the teams that are very excited, of founders, about a given technology and basically making sure that has a product market fit. So working towards that product market fit, working towards being able to scale up the company to be funded, which is in deep tech is difficult because the cycles are long and therefore investments are likely to be invested for a longer period, which increases the risk and reduces the IRR. That's the way it is with deep tech. But on the other hand, it's on companies that are extremely promising, so they are worth changing. There's a lot going on in longevity, for instance, right? I mean, I think the implications of any change in how in lifespan are massive across society, and in terms of the actual returns for people working in the space. I mean, anecdotally, some people have abandoned PhDs halfway, and there's a specific individual I'm not going to name, then left to Silicon Valley to launch the longevity startup, right? So I think that's the way I see it.
Okay. So just my last question. What are the 3 things that you think each of us need to learn to understand these newer technologies better and be better investors?
Okay, I think there's one thing that I said to people already for a long time, and there's people saying it louder than me, is that at this point in time, nothing stops you from learning. So that's the first one. So it's very easy to build using AI, using LLMs, and using deep research functions in the LLMs, or using Perplexity or other tools that exist. It's very easy for you to get knowledge distilled, but also to be able to trace the source and be critical about it. So
okay, that's one.
That's one. So the second is, with that knowledge, nothing is stopping you from using the agentic tools to build a business and do it with your own money at a very low cost in terms of capital. So one thing we are seeing with AI companies that you can do that. So by all means, go and be an entrepreneur. Even if it's a side hustle or it's just an experiment, I think it's worth it. And then the third one, I would say that we need to stop being scared of the future, because it's going to reach us anyway. So this idea that we live between the depression of the past and the anxiety of the future is wrong, and we all know it. So we're in a moment in time that whatever technology we have at hand is going to get developed. So we can develop ethically ourselves, or we can let somebody else do it unethically. I think I'd rather choose the first one, right?
Thank you, David, for sharing your words of wisdom. Thank you for being here at London Business School.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thanks very much for having me here.